Hey guys, tonight we're not drifting off to stories of kings and castles or whispered legends from dusty parchment. Tonight we're going somewhere much darker, before myths, before memories, before the very notion of time made sense to the human mind. Imagine not a moment in history, but the yawning absence before all moments. Not silence, but the kind of void so complete that sound has never dared to exist. No stars, no moon, no ticking clock, just a roiling molten earth spinning in the black, spewing gas and fire into an atmosphere no lungs could breathe. Lightning lashes without clouds, and the air is a choking soup of carbon dioxide, ammonia, and volcanic ash. You're not here yet. Nothing resembling you has even flickered into existence. But this is your world, your inheritance. You are part of this madness, whether you like it or not. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere strange, let me know your local time and location in the comments. It's oddly comforting to think of so many people trying to sleep through history at once. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin in deep time, a span so vast the human brain can't truly wrap itself around it. Imagine trying to count the seconds in 1 billion years. You'd need more than 30 actual years just to count that high, and that still wouldn't cover the age of this planet. We're talking 4.5 billion years of chaos, lava, storms, and the kind of beauty that could kill you just by looking at it too long. And then, life. Not in a garden, not with a bang, but with a single, microscopic whisper. Some stubborn little molecule learns how to copy itself in a shallow, sunlit tide pool. And just like that, the game begins. Slowly, almost laughably slowly, that tiny spark multiplies, changes, adapts. You aren't even a twinkle in evolution's eye yet, but your future is seeded in that moment. One day, many extinctions later, you'll be sitting comfortably in bed, listening to the story of how the entire world tried to stop you from ever existing. The irony? Life almost ends life before it even gets going. Cue the great oxygenation event, about 2.4 billion years ago. The first photosynthetic organisms, little cyanobacteria floating merrily in the oceans, begin releasing oxygen as a waste product. To them, it's like sneezing. To almost everything else alive at the time, it's pure poison. Oxygen was a planet killer back then. It rusted the iron out of the oceans, turned the atmosphere toxic for anaerobic life, and triggered the first known mass extinction in Earth's history. Let that sink in. The very thing you now depend on with every breath was once a deadly gas. Historians still argue whether this was the birth of progress or just a random biochemical accident, but it nearly sterilized the planet. You survived that? Kind of. Fast forward a couple billion years, things have settled, life's diversifying. Weird stuff with shells and teeth is crawling out of the oceans. Forests are rising. Dinosaurs are still a future dream. And then, as if Earth was just waiting to show off, it hits reset again. Enter the Permian-Triassic extinction, also known, with all due drama, as the Great Dying. Roughly 252 million years ago, Earth decided to clean house. You're not here yet, but let's imagine you are. An invisible, bodiless witness drifting through the most apocalyptic moment in planetary history. You hover over endless volcanic fields in what is now Siberia, so vast they could swallow entire countries. These aren't the charming little lava fountains from travel documentaries. These are flood basalts, unimaginably huge volcanic eruptions that belch carbon dioxide and methane for thousands of years. The sky is sickly green. The air stinks of sulfur. Acid rain eats away at the leaves, the soil, even stone. Oceans begin to boil, not with heat, but with carbon. CO2 turns seawater into acid, dissolving the shells of marine life and suffocating entire ecosystems. Coral reefs bleach and crumble. Fish float belly up in vast, lifeless rafts. The deep ocean, stripped of oxygen, becomes a toxic graveyard, exhaling hydrogen sulfide gas that kills both creatures and the scent of anything resembling life. You glide over a forest where the last surviving synapsid, one of your distant evolutionary cousins, gasps in a heatwave no organism was built to endure. Across the globe, species vanish, not just some, but almost all. About 96% of marine life, gone. Around 70% of land vertebrates, erased. Even insects, those unkillable cockroach cousins, are nearly wiped out. It's the closest Earth has come to hitting the reset button on complex life entirely. And it almost worked. Your entire existence is balanced on the razor-thin chance that just enough species survived, just enough genetic material scraped by to try again. You could have been a failed prototype in the sedimentary rock record, a fossil nobody ever found. And yet, some small cluster of surviving life, endured. There's no music to this extinction. No explosions that a movie soundtrack could score. Just centuries of choking clouds, dying seas, silent forests, and the slow, crushing realization that Earth is not on your side. This is the backdrop of your story, the long, hostile preamble that sets the stakes before humans even enter the stage. You think you've had bad days? Try being a lungfish in an acidifying swamp with no idea where your ecosystem went, or a tree losing its last leaf in a sky gone dim, or a microorganism clinging to a hydrothermal vent, unaware that it's now part of evolution's final desperate attempt to keep the lights on. This is your origin story, in the most cosmic sense. A planet that seems, at best, indifferent to life, and at worst, actively allergic to it. And still, somehow, life persists. Barely, quietly, stubbornly. By the time your earliest recognizable ancestors crawl onto land, Earth has already tried to end all of it, more than once. This isn't just a tough neighborhood. It's a world where survival is an act of rebellion. And you? You're going to be born into that world eventually. But first, a few more trials by fire. Time slides forward, not in seconds or minutes, but in epochs. Continents drift like lazy rafts on molten seas, colliding, cracking, reforming. Life, always stubborn, always reinventing itself, climbs out of the ashes again. Fish grow legs, legs become limbs, limbs learn to climb, leap, grasp, and eventually carry whole futures across the land. And somewhere, after the dinosaurs have had their fun and meteors have done their worst, the wind begins to shift in a way that matters to you. The world is starting to look familiar now. There are grasses, herds, birds in the sky, the odd pine tree holding its own. And tucked into the thickets of eastern Africa, the story of you quietly begins. Not with a bang, but with a sharp intake of breath in the tall savanna grass. You are Australopithecus, or at least your bones will be called that millions of years later by creatures with jackets and clipboards. Right now, you are just trying not to die. The sun presses down on your skin like a hand that doesn't know its own strength. There's no shade for miles. Your feet are hard and calloused. You've never known a shoe. The grass brushes your knees, concealing both food and danger. You have no tools beyond what you can carry in your arms or pry from the earth with your fingers. Your entire world is heat, scent, movement, and the terrifying silence that comes before a predator strikes. You smell rain before you see it. A promise. A memory. The storm clouds building on the horizon crackle with electric relief, but they're still far away. Right now, the air tastes of dust and something worse. It starts low in your gut, a sour churn. There's something out there. Maybe a leopard. Maybe a pack of wild dogs, tireless and lean. Maybe it's nothing. But you know better than to assume that. You pause, crouching low, heart pounding in your chest. Your ears swivel slightly, not as well as a gazelle's, but better than they will in the future. You are prey, soft-bodied, upright, exposed. And the only thing standing between you and an early death is a brain just clever enough to notice when silence gets too quiet. You freeze, every muscle tensed, ready to run, to scream, to climb, to fight with rocks if you have to. But the moment passes. Whatever was out there, if it was out there, moves on. Still, your heart doesn't slow right away. The body remembers close calls. And this wasn't your first. It won't be your last. You share this landscape with hyenas, whose laughter means death, with lions that can run faster than fear itself, and with crocodiles so ancient they probably remember the Permian extinction better than you do. And it's not just the animals. It's the hunger. There's never quite enough. You dig for tubers, chew bitter roots, suck marrow from bones cracked open with rocks. Your meals come from scavenging more often than from hunting. You watch vultures to find carrion, and you wait for the big predators to finish their meals before you creep in and steal the scraps. Yes, you're basically the world's earliest food delivery delay. Always the last to the table. Your hands are getting smarter too. You've begun to use them to grip stones, to poke into holes, to swat away flies instead of just twitching. Your fingers itch for tasks they haven't even evolved for yet. You don't know it, but your descendants will one day sculpt cathedrals and crack codes and ruin their posture by scrolling on glowing rectangles. But right now, those hands are mostly used to climb and carry, to cradle infants and fend off things with teeth. You're not alone. That's your true strength. You live in a small group, perhaps a dozen of you. You groom each other, sleep huddled together for warmth and protection. If one of you is injured, the others wait. If a baby cries, everyone notices. The group survives together, or not at all. There's comfort here, even beauty. At night, the stars are so sharp they feel close enough to pluck from the sky. The moon casts shadows that dance across the ground like living things. You tell stories without words, through gestures, through shared glances, through the call of a voice that means, "Come back," or "Watch out," or "I'm still here." And then, one day, something changes. It starts with the sky. Again. You wake to a strange orange cast across the clouds, a stillness that settles over the land like a held breath. The animals are quiet. The wind is wrong. A distant sound rolls across the plains, too deep to be thunder, too steady to be ignored. You don't know it yet, but this is the beginning of something much bigger than you. A shadow is growing on the far side of the planet. Not a predator this time, but an event so vast it doesn't care what species you are. The Earth is about to convulse again, and this time it will aim directly at the fragile beginnings of your species. You don't see the eruption, not yet, but you will feel it. Not in days, but in generations. Ash will fall like snow on lands you'll never walk. The sun will dim, the plants will die, and the warmth you count on each morning will become a stranger. Your lineage, those awkward upright apes scraping by in Africa, will be reduced to a few scattered survivors. Just a few thousand, maybe fewer. All the branches of your family tree will be trimmed down to a single trembling twig. And you? You'll be clinging to that twig with everything you have. Historians still argue whether that coming eruption nearly wiped us out or merely pushed us to the edge. But one thing is certain, it's coming. And the sky, once again, will fall. You're not the same anymore. Thousands of years have passed since the days of Australopithecus. You've changed. Your brow has receded. Your mind has sharpened. Your tools are better now. Stones flaked with intention, not just instinct. You walk upright with confidence. You bury your dead. You carry fire in your hands. You are Homo sapiens, and for the first time, it feels like you might be something special. The world is vast, but still mostly unknowable. You and your small clan live along the edge of a shimmering lake in what will one day be Sumatra, or maybe southern India. It's 74,000 years ago, and life is as stable as it ever gets. The elders speak of the movements of stars. The rains follow their rhythms. The animals migrate with a predictability you've learned to read like scripture. You fish, you dig, you trade skins for honey with a neighboring group 3 valleys away. No one would call this life easy, but it makes sense. Until it doesn't. It starts with the birds. They vanish. One day the usual morning cacophony doesn't arrive. No fluttering wings overhead. No shrieks from the treetops. Just an eerie, absolute quiet, as though the forest itself is holding its breath. Then comes the sound. It begins as a whisper, a groaning beneath your feet that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. A vibration in the bones. The elders freeze. Children stop playing. Even the dogs whimper and crawl under baskets. Then the whisper grows, into a roar, into a scream. The ground itself lurches sideways, throwing you down, cracking open with a voice so ancient and furious, it feels like the earth itself is waking up just to kill you. Your ears pop. The trees shake. Somewhere, far beyond your horizon, a supervolcano has exploded with the force of 1,000 Krakatoas. You don't know its name. You never will. But history will call it Toba. And you are one of the unlucky few close enough to understand it without a word. The ash comes next. At first you think it's just smoke. But it doesn't rise. It falls. Like dust, soft and grey, coating the world in a funeral shroud. The sky begins to change color, yellow, then orange, then a sickly green. Finally, it fades to black. But this is no night. There are no stars, no moon, just a dense, unnatural darkness that settles over the land and refuses to move. You stumble through it, coughing. The ash clogs your throat, your nostrils, your eyes. It's like breathing powdered bone. Every inhale is a burn. Every step is a prayer you don't believe in. The lake has turned thick with sludge. The trees sag under the weight of the dust. Babies cry and cannot be soothed. Nothing about the world feels right. The sun does not rise the next day, or the day after, or the day after that. You don't know it yet, but the blast has ejected so much sulfur and ash into the atmosphere that it will shroud the earth for years. Temperatures are already dropping. Crops, what few plants you gather or trade, are beginning to die. The animals you depend on are vanishing, either starved or fled or buried beneath the ash. And then the rains come. You'd think that might be a good thing. But this is not water as you know it. The skies open, and a black, oily sludge pours down like punishment. It burns your skin. It fouls your drinking supplies. The streams run dark and sour. This is acid rain, born from sulfur dioxide reacting with water vapor in the air. And your body, already strained, cannot fight another invisible threat. Your clan builds shelters. You try to cover the weak, the old, the infants. You huddle in a tight circle, fires flickering low, barely enough to warm your fingers. The gods have gone silent. The stories no longer make sense. You look to the horizon and find only darkness. No birds, no breeze, no light. Food runs out quickly. The ash covers the roots you once dug for. The fruit trees are dead or dying. You gnaw on old hides, scrape lichen from rocks. Insects become delicacies. You share one charred rabbit among 20, and you pretend it will be better next week, next month, next season. But the seasons no longer come. Historians still argue whether the Toba eruption truly brought humanity to the brink of extinction. Some say the bottleneck is overstated. Others believe we were reduced to fewer than 10,000 breeding individuals, perhaps only 3,000. A single unlucky raid from a pack of hyenas could have wiped us out entirely. But you don't know any of that. All you know is that the world is ending, and no one is coming to help. What's worse is not the hunger, not the ash, not the rain. It's the waiting, the not knowing, the days that bleed into nights without stars. You cannot track time anymore. The rhythms of the earth, sunrise, bird song, flowering trees, are gone. And without rhythm, you start to lose yourself. People stop talking. The elders begin to wither. A child disappears into the forest and is never seen again. The firewood is wet. The fish are gone. And your dreams are filled with visions of a world that once was, now unreachable, like a fading memory you never actually lived. You hold on because it's all you can do, because you saw your mother do it, because someone needs to hold the infant through the night, because someone has to keep the fire going, no matter how low it burns. You are a fragile strand of DNA wrapped in skin and hope, and you are enduring the worst natural catastrophe humanity has ever known. You will not be the same after this, but you will not be broken either, because somewhere in that blackened sky, far above the ash and acid, the stars are still there, waiting. The days stopped mattering a long time ago. You live now in a kind of half-light, a slow, bruised twilight that never deepens into true night, but never returns to day either. The sun is a pale memory, hidden behind thick layers of ash and dust still hanging in the sky. You don't look up anymore. There's nothing to see. It's been months, maybe years, since the Toba eruption turned your world upside down. You stopped counting. Everyone did. Time has become soft, stretched, unreliable. You mark its passage by how many elders you've buried, by the days since your last full meal, by the way your ribs now show through your skin like thin branches. This is not a dramatic apocalypse anymore. That was the explosion, the choking ash, the acidic rain. This is the slow death, the waiting room of extinction. You are not dying from fire. You are dying from everything else. The cold is the worst part. You thought you knew cold. You'd seen it in mountain rains, in highland nights. But this is something different. The air feels heavier now, like it carries sorrow along with frost. Every breath cuts. Every night, your teeth chatter like they're trying to talk you out of staying alive. The shelters you built after the eruption sag under wet ash and snow. Yes, snow. In places that never knew it. You huddle close to the fire, but fuel is hard to come by. You burned all the dry wood long ago. Now you strip bark, tear roots, even try dung. Anything that will smolder without filling the shelter with toxic smoke. Some nights you wish it would fill the shelter with toxic smoke. At least it would be warm. The clan is different now. Smaller, quieter. The children don't laugh anymore. The old ones speak less and sleep more, until they don't wake up. Your own mother passed last moon, or what you think was a moon. You buried her under frozen soil, digging with cracked fingernails and weeping more from the wind than from grief. You don't cry for the dead anymore. There's no energy for it, and you're hungry. Always, relentlessly, gnawingly hungry. Hunger becomes your shadow, your heartbeat, your lullaby. There are days you chew grass just to remember what chewing feels like. You suck the marrow from brittle bones that have been boiled 3 times already. Once you ate part of a leather sling. It didn't help, but it gave your jaw something to do. Some days, the insects are a blessing. Beetles and larvae under wet bark. Squirming, juicy, protein-packed salvation. Other days it's roots, bitter and stringy, barely food. The fruit trees died seasons ago. The animals too. The birds vanished first. Then the herds. Then the scavengers. And now? Now it's just you and whatever hasn't already starved or frozen. The clan whispers about others. Distant groups, far across the rivers or mountains. Some say they're all dead. Some say they're thriving. But no one dares to leave in search of them. The world is too big now, too dangerous. Even the bravest among you are afraid of what lies beyond the dim horizon. You've become very good at listening. Every creak of ice, every shift in the wind, every breath beside you in the night. You can hear sickness now, even before the cough begins. And when it does, everyone takes one step back. Slowly, sadly, because there are no cures anymore. No herbs, no hope. One by one people vanish. The quiet man who always carved spear points. Gone. The woman who sang as she stirred the cooking pot. Gone. Even the baby, born midwinter with lungs full of frost, never stood a chance. You wrapped her tiny body in a squirrel pelt and placed her in the crook of a tree, whispering a name that would never be remembered. This is what a bottleneck feels like. You don't know the term. But one day, long after this twilight ends, scientists will look into the strands of your descendants' DNA and find it. A compression point. A time when almost all human genetic diversity vanished. Because you, yes, you, are part of a microscopic population, maybe just a few thousand people, scattered across continents, barely holding on. Statistically speaking, your survival should be impossible. And yet, here you are. Historians still argue whether this event truly dropped humanity to such a low number. Some believe the impact was global and devastating. Others suggest it was more localized. But you don't have the luxury of arguing. You just have to live, or try to. But one evening, after too many hopeless ones, someone calls out. You stumble from the shelter, heart thudding, because any noise these days could mean death, or a miracle. She's pointing upward. And for the first time in memory, you see a break in the clouds. Just a sliver. Just wide enough to let something through. A star. Tiny, stubborn, defiant. The sky is still sickly. The air still burns your lungs. But that pinprick of light feels like a heartbeat. Like a promise. You stare until your eyes water. You stare until the clouds roll back in and hide it again. But it doesn't matter. You saw it, and suddenly, for the first time since the darkness began, you believe in the possibility of after. Not hope, exactly, but maybe something adjacent. A cousin of hope, dressed in ash and silence, peeking through the wreckage. You go back inside. You sit near the fire. You hand the last piece of roasted bark to the old man beside you, and you tell him what you saw. He nods, like he remembers what stars used to mean. The others listen. No one speaks, but the fire crackles a little louder. Or maybe you're just imagining that. Either way, you sleep with the faintest idea that maybe, not today, not tomorrow, but someday the sun might come back. The star was real, and so was the slow, creeping change that followed. The ash thinned. Not everywhere, not all at once, but enough. The sun, once banished behind curtains of soot, began to find cracks in the sky. Faint light returned. So did the moss, the insects, the stubborn roots that grew again in the cracks of stone. It didn't happen quickly, but it happened. And now, time marches on. Thousands of years pass. Generations live and die, telling stories of the sky that went dark, of the ancestors who survived on insects and memory. And gradually, the world reshapes itself. Grass spreads across plains once choked by ash. Forests regrow. Animals return. So do you. You are still Homo sapiens, but the world you live in is not a paradise. It is an arena. One massive, frozen gauntlet. It is 20,000 years ago, and you've been born during the last glacial maximum. The Ice Age is in full swing, not in movie terms, not saber-toothed tigers chasing cartoon sloths, but in the slow, grinding way of glaciers and wind. The northern hemisphere is buried under walls of ice a mile high. From Britain to Canada, it's just frozen silence. South of that? You live in the fringe, a land of tundra, cold steppe, and wind that howls like it wants to peel the skin off your bones. Your home is a shallow cave nestled against a cliff in what will one day be France. You share it with your family and your family's family, and some people who may or may not be related to you, but know how to tan hides, so they're in. The floor is damp. The walls are stained with soot. A fire burns day and night, barely pushing back the chill. The smoke doesn't always rise. It curls low, stingy, clinging to hair and lungs and everything you own. You smell like ash, grease, and survival. Outside, the landscape is a frozen wasteland. The wind never stops. It pushes against your face, claws at your clothes, slips under the seams of your furs like it has a personal grudge. The snow isn't fluffy or picturesque. It's hard, compacted, filthy with ash and mammoth droppings. You don't play in it. You endure it. The sky, flat grey most days. The sun limps along the horizon, low and feeble, like it's lost interest in this part of the world. Daylight lasts just a few hours in winter. You spend most of those hours not hunting or inventing things, but waiting for the wind to die down, for a reindeer herd to pass by, for your stomach to stop screaming, your joints ache. You're 23 and already feel ancient. Cold settles into your bones and refuses to leave. There is no concept of being warm, only degrees of less cold. You sleep next to others in a pile, pressed so close that no one has personal space and someone is always snoring into your ear. You don't complain. What would be the point? You chew on leather to keep it soft enough to stitch. You boil marrow bones 3 times before giving up. Your hands are raw from scraping hides, your teeth worn from grit in your food. And your food? Let's just say it's not a buffet. Your diet is mostly meat, when you can get it, raw when necessary, and every scrap used. A single mammoth could feed your group for weeks, but that requires an actual mammoth and the ability to not die while bringing it down. More often, it's frozen fish hacked from under ice, or roots so tough they fight back. Once someone found a cache of ancient berries buried beneath the snow. That was a holiday. You called it Berry Day. It never came again. Hygiene is theoretical. You rinse your hands with snow and call it clean. Lice are your roommates. If someone gets a toothache, it's usually their last one. A rotting molar can kill you faster than a wound. At least the wound comes with a dramatic story. Still, you endure. Because that's what you do. One day you venture out with 2 others, wrapped in thick furs that don't quite fit and leak cold through every seam. You walk across a wind-blasted plain, scanning the horizon for movement. You're not looking for danger, you're looking for food. You haven't eaten in 2 days. Then, in the distance, you see it. The telltale ridgeline of a mammoth's back, dark against the snow. You don't cheer. You don't even smile. You just nod, grim and silent. Because now comes the hard part. Killing it before it kills you. But that's for tomorrow. Tonight, you return to the cave, your cheeks cracked from wind, your fingers barely bending from cold. Inside, the fire is low, the air thick with smoke. A child cries. Someone is coughing again. Wet, heavy, not a good sign. But you sit, and you share what little you brought back. A few frozen eggs, a clump of moss you scraped from a rock. It's not much, but it's something. Historians still argue whether Ice Age humans were better off than early farmers, whether the cold was deadlier than disease, whether starvation was more chronic or just seasonal. But you don't argue. You don't even speak unless you have to. Breath is precious. Words are luxuries. And despite it all, despite the frostbite, the hunger, the aching loneliness of a white, endless horizon, you keep going. Why? Because somewhere in the back of your mind, deeper than language, deeper than memory, there's a sense that this can't be all there is. That the ice will eventually melt. That the herds will return. That one day, your descendants might sit by a warm fire. Not a smoky one in a cave, but a safe, bright one in a house, with full bellies and soft blankets, and no idea what it took to get there. You don't have the words for legacy, but you're living it. And tonight, the wind howls outside your cave, but inside, the fire still burns. It's hard to believe, but cold is no longer your biggest threat. Because now, to eat, you must kill monsters. The Ice Age has sculpted the world into an arena of giants. And you, Homo sapiens, are absurdly outmatched. The animals are bigger, stronger, faster. They don't want to be dinner. They don't even want to be near you. But hunger has left you with no choice. The mammoth you're stalking is nearly 10 tons of hair, hide, muscle, and mood swings. It towers over you like a walking hill, tusks curled forward like nature's own scythes. It could flip you into next week with a single shrug. And yet, this is your plan. You crouch behind a drift of snow, clutching a long wooden spear tipped with stone. It's sharp. You made sure of that. Spent a whole day chipping and flaking it into a deadly edge. But looking at the mammoth now, it feels laughable. Like trying to fight a thunderstorm with a spoon. Still, you inch forward, breath shallow. Your hunting group, 8 of you, if you count the boy who just learned to hold a spear without stabbing himself, is circling the creature. It hasn't seen you yet. Or maybe it has, and it just doesn't care. That's worse somehow. The plan is simple. The plan is always simple. Drive it toward the pit. Tire it out. Get it to fall or stumble. Then move in. What actually happens? It smells you. With a roar like a mountain cracking open, the mammoth wheels around. Snow explodes beneath its feet. Its eyes flash with panic and fury. One of your companions throws his spear too early. It misses, bounces harmlessly off thick hide. And now it's charging. You run. There's no shame in it. You're not a hero. You're a barely upright primate in a tunic made of reindeer intestines, trying not to die under a beast that doesn't know extinction is coming. Someone doesn't make it. You don't look back. You can't. The scream tells you enough. You'll mourn later. If you live, you survive. Somehow. The mammoth falls. Eventually. Not today, maybe not even this week, but you and the others will track it, harass it, wound it again and again until it can't stand. And when it goes down, it will be brutal. Quick only if you're lucky. And then comes the real work. You gather around the fallen giant in awe and exhaustion. It's steaming in the cold, blood spreading into the snow like ink. The smell is unbearable. Meat, bile, broken bone. But your stomach doesn't care. You carve with flint, hack with bone, wrench with hands gone numb from cold. It takes all day, maybe more. You'll eat the meat raw if you have to. Smoke it over a fire if you can. The fat is precious, the marrow a treasure. The hide will become blankets, coats, and perhaps even a roof. The tendons, rope, the bones, tools. Nothing will be wasted, except the hunter who didn't make it back. You bury him nearby if you can, or perhaps you leave his body for the wolves, not out of cruelty, but practicality. You can't carry both meat and grief, and the grief will come later like frostbite, slow and deep. But not every hunt ends with a feast. Sometimes it ends with you dragging a wounded friend back to the cave. His leg is crushed. A tusk caught him mid-charge. You splint it with sticks and hope. He cries through the night. His fever rises. Infection sets in. There's no penicillin, no clean bandages, no sterile tools. There's only the shaman. She hunches beside him, humming low chants into the firelight. She burns herbs, waves feathers, speaks to spirits. It's more comfort than cure. You all know it. By morning, he's gone. That's just how it is. A broken bone can mean death. A twisted ankle can mean death. A deep cut in the wrong weather, or a tooth that swells and rots, or a stomach pain you can't explain. Death, death, and more death. The world doesn't care about your cleverness. It's just one long obstacle course with mammoths at one end and disease at the other. You're not the top predator. You're just the most desperate one. And yet, here's the thing that keeps haunting you. It works. Somehow, against all odds, it works. The hunts succeed often enough. The fires stay lit. The children grow. The tribe endures. Historians still argue how often Ice Age people hunted versus scavenged, whether they relied more on small game than big kills, whether women gathered more calories than men hunted. But the stories that survive in bones and cave paintings are not about berries. They're about this, the mammoth, the terror, the triumph. It's not just survival, it's meaning. You'll retell the story of today's hunt for years, exaggerate it a little, maybe add a second mammoth, or say the dead hunter took down 3 wolves before he fell. His name will echo in your stories, in your songs. He will become more than he was. Because that's how you honor the ones who fall. You make them part of the reason the others go on. And when the meat is gone, when the wind howls again, and when the ground starts shaking from the next herd's approach, you will pick up your spear again, because you're still hungry. Because this is the price of a meal. You wake one morning and the wind is quieter. The ice has not vanished, but it's pulling back, melting at the edges like a receding dream. The tundra softens, grasses thicken. The mammoths still roam, but they're fewer, more cautious. The air smells less like frozen breath and more like wet soil. Something is shifting. And in the warmth of this new world, someone, maybe it's you, has an idea. What if instead of chasing food, food could stay in one place? At first, it's not revolutionary. You drop a few seeds near your shelter, and later they sprout. Coincidence? Maybe. But then you try again. You begin to notice where the best berries grow. You clear a patch of land. You water it. You stop wandering quite so far. One day you plant on purpose, and just like that, everything changes. It is 10,000 years ago. You're no longer a nomad. You've become something new, a farmer. The world has warmed. The rivers swell with meltwater. The soil is rich, black, and promises things your ancestors couldn't have dreamed of. Predictability, abundance, control. At first, it feels like progress. You can grow more food in one place than you used to gather across an entire valley. You don't have to chase the herds anymore, to carry infants across cold plains, to sleep in caves or makeshift shelters. Now you have a home, a permanent one, with walls of packed mud and woven reeds, a fire pit in the middle, clay pots for storage, a place to sleep that doesn't move with the seasons. It sounds like a happy ending. It's not. The days are longer now, not because the sun has changed, but because your back is breaking. You wake before dawn to weed the fields, to carry water, to tend to crops that, unlike reindeer, don't simply walk into your spear. The soil dries out. The birds pick at your seeds. The insects arrive in swarms. There is no pause, no off-season, just more planting, more bending, more work. Your spine begins to curve. Your knees ache. Your shoulders are knotted with pain. The hunter-gatherer body, once lean and strong, begins to collapse under the strain of repetitive labor. When future archaeologists study your skeleton, they'll see arthritis, bone spurs, worn-out vertebrae. You've traded strength for stress fractures, but at least you're eating, right? Well, sort of. Your diet has changed. Radically. You used to eat dozens of plants, seasonal fruits, wild game, fish, nuts, roots. Now, you eat grain, mostly wheat or barley, ground into a paste, then boiled or baked into something not entirely unlike bread, if bread were sad and barely digestible. You are shorter now. Your bones are thinner. Your teeth are rotting from the starch. You suffer from anemia. Your children are often born small and weak. Malnutrition is common, despite all this food. And still, you keep planting. Because now you have to. You've built your home next to the field. Your food comes from the field. Your entire survival depends on the success of this narrow strip of soil and what it decides to yield. If the rains don't come, or come too hard, or the locusts arrive, there is no backup plan. You can't just pick up and leave. You're not that kind of human anymore. Historians still debate whether agriculture was a brilliant innovation or humanity's greatest mistake. There are strong arguments on both sides, but from where you're standing, covered in dust, bent over another row of barley, it doesn't feel like a triumph. It feels like a trap. You've traded freedom for food security, except the food isn't secure, and you're not free. Your days are full of tasks: fetching water, guarding crops, shoeing goats, grinding grain, mending tools, hauling baskets, cooking porridge. You no longer have long, open afternoons to sit under trees or listen to stories or paint bison on cave walls. Your free time is when you're too tired to move. Even your body has become a tool. You've had more children because now they're useful, little hands to help in the fields. You need more mouths to work the land, even if those mouths must also be fed. It's a numbers game now, and the numbers don't favor joy. But the change isn't just physical, it's psychological. There was a time when the world felt alive, full of spirits and mystery and motion. You chased the herds. You followed the stars. You lived with the rhythms of the land. Now, you command the land. Or try to. And in doing so, you've separated yourself from it. You mark time with planting and harvest, not solstice and migration. You speak of mine and yours. You build fences. You draw lines in the earth. The animals you once revered as kin are now livestock. The wild spaces you once honored as sacred are now potential farmland. It's not all bad. You have pottery now. You've domesticated dogs and goats. You've invented new tools. Someone down the river has figured out how to smelt copper. There are stories being carved into stone. songs being passed down in melody rather than memory. But still, each day begins and ends with the same thought. Is there enough food? And if there is, it's because you worked your fingers raw for it. You used to roam. Now, you labor. You used to chase life. Now you dig for it. This isn't a golden age. It's a slow, grinding age of sore knees, sunburns, and wheat mush. And yet, the village grows. More people arrive. More fields are cleared. Someone builds a wall. Someone else offers to lead. You've traded one kind of struggle for another, and you're just beginning to find out what that trade really costs. The field is quiet this morning, but not in a peaceful way. You're already outside before the sun has lifted above the hills, shoulders aching, fingers cracked and calloused. Your feet sink into the mud. Again. And as you reach for the first clump of weeds, you hear it. A cough. Low, persistent, ragged. Someone's sick. Again. You glance toward the huts. Smoke curls lazily from cooking fires, and a few goats bleat drowsily in their pens. Everything looks normal, but you know better. That cough is spreading. The last time, half the village caught it. 2 of them never recovered. You live in one of the world's first settlements now, Neolithic, permanent, and packed with people. It's not a city yet, but it's no longer just a loose camp of wandering families. The houses are crammed close together. Shared walls, shared fires, shared air, and shared sickness. Your ancestors didn't have this problem. Back when people followed the herds and moved with the seasons, disease didn't spread easily. You didn't spend your life shoulder to shoulder with 100 unwashed bodies and their livestock. But here, in your tidy, hard-working village, you live beside pigs, chickens, goats, creatures you've penned in, bred, and loved, and who are now quietly sharing their pathogens with you. Smallpox, measles, tuberculosis. They're new here, new and angry. They've made the leap from beast to human. And in a village with no soap, no sewers, and no concept of germ theory, that leap becomes a wildfire. You wake one day with a fever. You shiver even though the air is warm. Your joints ache. Your breath rasps. You think it's just the usual flu, something to sweat through. And then you see the spots. Tiny at first, angry red blisters that swell and burn. Your skin betrays you. The elders whisper that it's punishment. The priest says the gods are angry. The goats, thankfully, do not offer an opinion. You survive. Barely. But not everyone does. The child across the lane, the woman who braided your sister's hair, the claymaker with the kind laugh. They don't recover. Their names become cautionary tales. This is the new reality. Sickness is part of the furniture now. And you're not just sick. You're tired. Not from the flu, but from everything. The work never ends. The land must be cleared. The irrigation trench has collapsed. The fence needs mending. You don't hunt anymore, but that doesn't mean you rest. You bend your back to grain and mud and weeds. And now, you're not doing it for yourself. You owe your labor to someone else. A man with a better hut, more goats, and a large stick told you that your family's field actually belongs to him. Why? Because his father said so. Or the priest said so. Or he has a shiny rock that apparently makes him king of barley. You've entered the age of surplus, and surplus has changed everything. Once you only gathered what you could carry. Now the fields produce more than one family needs, at least on good years. But you don't get to keep it. The grain goes to the chief, or the temple, or the local warlord who graciously agreed not to burn your hut down. You get to live so long as you give. Welcome to your new job title, peasant. You don't vote. You don't own. You don't rest. You farm, pay, obey. And now, another man approaches your door. He's wearing a bone necklace, which apparently means something, and he tells you that this year's taxes have increased. You owe more grain, and maybe your eldest child, who will help dig a canal in another village. Possibly forever. You try not to react, but inside, something twists. Because now, you're not just afraid of lions or disease. You're afraid of people. People with more than you. People with weapons. People who believe they are more human than you because they were born into a different hut. The village has walls now. Not to keep animals out, but to keep others out. You hear rumors of other tribes across the river, over the hills, who envy your water, your barley, your clay. So, a meeting is held. Warriors are chosen. Spears are sharpened. You are given one. You've never used it before, not like this. You're marched to the edge of a field, another village's field, really, and told to defend it, or conquer it. It's hard to tell which. A horn is blown. Feet pound the earth. And suddenly, you are in your first organized battle. It's chaos, screaming, mud, blood. A man lunges at you with a club. You flinch. He misses. You stab. He falls. You've just killed someone, not for food, not in self-defense, but for grain, for ownership, for land. Historians still argue when the first true wars began, but this feels like one. It's not a raid. It's not a scuffle. It's systematic, coordinated. A test of strategy, not strength. You survive. Again. But it doesn't feel like winning. You return to your village and receive a nod from the chief. Your share of grain doesn't increase. Your hut doesn't improve. But you're alive. And that's something. Now you know what your life is worth in this new world. A handful of wheat and the ability to swing a spear. Your ancestors might have gone hungry more often, but they were never property. Never pawns. They didn't build walls or pay taxes. They didn't die in someone else's field. The agricultural revolution didn't just grow food. It grew hierarchy. It seeded cities. It bred plagues. It invented ownership. And it taught you that misery doesn't have to come from nature. Sometimes it's cultivated, just like your crops. You wake to find the sun gone. Not hidden behind clouds, not veiled in fog. Gone. As though someone scraped it from the sky like soot from a hearth. The light outside is strange. Not quite darkness, but something worse. An eerie, flat grey that stains everything it touches. The shadows are wrong. The birds aren't singing. The air feels heavier, quieter, as if the world has paused and forgotten to press play. It is the year 536 AD. You don't know it yet, but historians will one day call this the worst year to be alive. And you're living through it. You were already having a rough go of it. The Roman Empire is long gone, splintered into bickering kingdoms, the roads crumbling, the aqueducts dry. You were born into a world that remembers greatness but has mostly misplaced it. Trade is a whisper of what it was. Roads are dangerous. Literacy is rare. The gods are quiet. Then the sky changed. One morning, a dry fog drifted across your village. At first, people thought it was smoke, but it didn't sting the eyes. It didn't smell like fire. It simply was. And it stayed. Day after day, week after week, month after month. The sun still rose, technically, but it didn't shine. It looked like the moon, dim, pale, and not particularly warm. You could stare at it directly. No one wanted to. Summer never came. The crops failed. Again. The barley turned white and brittle. The fruit trees flowered, then gave up. Even the weeds seemed uncertain. You tried to plant anyway. You prayed. You offered food to saints. You whispered to old gods you weren't supposed to believe in anymore. Nothing worked. The famine spread like spilled ink. First your village, then the next, then entire regions. The Irish chroniclers wrote of a failure of bread. In China, frost fell in July. In Constantinople, the markets emptied. Even the rats looked thinner. There are no caravans anymore. No ships. Just people walking, starving, carrying bundles of whatever they can't afford to leave behind. Your roads are choked with the hungry and the hopeless. Entire towns are abandoned. Entire families vanish between sunrise and dusk. You eat bark. You grind acorns into dust and pretend it's flour. You chew leather. Sometimes you find a half-rotten fish near the river and boil it until the smell fades. No one asks questions about what's in the stew. The priest says it's punishment. The local lord says it's sorcery. The elders say it's the end. You just try to stay warm. Historians now believe the cause was volcanic, maybe a massive eruption in Iceland, or perhaps in Central America. The ash and sulfuric particles ejected into the stratosphere reflected sunlight and triggered a global climate anomaly. Crops failed from Ireland to Korea. This was no local disaster. It was a planet-wide event. And as if the failed harvests weren't enough, disease begins to stir. It starts with fevers, chills, skin that blisters and blackens. The usual remedies, moss poultices, prayers, the bloodletting knife, do nothing. You hear of entire villages dying within days, whole monasteries gone silent. Merchants whisper of a plague ship in the harbor, its crew already half dead, their lips black and cracked. You light candles, you burn herbs, you close the shutters and draw the blankets tight. But it still finds you, the darkness, not just outside, but inside. There's a heaviness now, pressing into your chest, behind your eyes. People are beginning to speak less, as if language itself is too expensive. There are no more weddings, no festivals, no song. You bury another neighbor, then another. Then you stop burying them at all. There's a pile now, at the edge of the woods. The crows have figured it out, and still, the sun does not return. Historians still argue whether the famine of 536 was worse than the Black Death or the Spanish flu. But there's something uniquely cruel about this year, because it was the first truly global catastrophe to touch nearly every corner of the human world at once, without explanation, without relief, without memory of a time before. Even the sky felt sick. You begin to forget what warmth felt like, what full stomachs felt like, what hope felt like. You sleep longer, you dream less. Some nights, you wonder if you should even bother rising. But you do, because someone needs water, because someone needs firewood, because someone, against all odds, is still pregnant. And one morning, not long after another meaningless season has passed, you blink in confusion. There's something strange in the air, Light. Not much, just a faint glint on the edge of your window frame. But it's there. You go outside. The fog isn't gone, but it's thinning. The air smells different, less like rot, more like rain. The clouds are moving. You can see where the sky might be. You don't say anything. You're afraid if you name it, it'll vanish. But you feel it. Change. Not a return to joy, not a sudden burst of sunflowers and fresh bread. Just the idea that things could get better, that this year might end, and that maybe, just maybe, you'll live to see the next one. You smell the death before you see it. It rides in on the sea breeze, clinging to the sails of Genoese ships arriving from the east. The port city is bustling this morning, as always. Sailors shouting, carts rattling, gulls wheeling overhead. But something is wrong. There's tension in the air. You can feel it in your gut before anyone says a word. Then someone does. The first whisper. The ships from Kaffa have plague on board. You laugh it off at first. Everyone does. Sailors are always sick, but the dock workers look pale. The authorities try to turn the ships away. It's too late. The rats are already ashore. It's 1347. You're a merchant's apprentice, running errands through the crooked alleys and teeming markets of a bustling Italian city. Life is hard, but not cruel. Business is good. You've seen more bread than your ancestors ever did. The cathedral bells still ring. The baker still shouts from the street corner. But within days, everything begins to change. It starts with the sailors. Black boils, buboes, swell under their arms, in their groins, on their necks. They burn with fever. They vomit blood. Some scream for hours before they die. Others go quiet, faces blotched with purple. You pass a man one morning on your way to the fishmonger. By evening, he's a corpse, left where he fell. Then come the rumors. Constantinople is infected. So is Marseille. Paris has gone quiet. And worse, every road leading out of your city now carries people trying to escape it. Your neighbors are boarding up their doors. The priests walk in silence, cloaks drawn high, swinging censers that no longer seem to ward off anything. The town square empties. The smell intensifies. And still, no one understands what this is. Some say it's divine punishment, the wrath of God upon sinful cities. Others blame the stars, the alignment of Saturn and Mars. A few suspect foul air, miasma. So the rich flee to the countryside, and the poor are left to burn herbs in the windows and pray. But it keeps spreading. You wake one morning to find your master coughing, blood speckling his lips. He tells you to run. You don't. You stay. You hold his hand until he dies 3 days later. No priest comes. You bury him behind the shop, digging with your bare hands, sobbing so hard you don't realize your own glands are swelling. You are alone now. Your friends begin to vanish. The girl who sold onions in the square, the old widow who fed the pigeons, the boy who used to beg outside the church. Their doors are marked with charcoal, a cross, or sometimes just a smear of ash. You stop knocking. You stop looking. The bells ring less now. There's no one left to pull the ropes. At night, you lie awake, listening to the carts. The death carts. They roll slowly through the streets, wooden wheels echoing against the stone. A man walks ahead, ringing a bell, calling out, "Bring out your dead!" His voice is hoarse from repetition. His cart is always full. You can't tell if you're more afraid of the plague or of being mistaken for someone who's already dead. People begin to turn on each other. The healthy avoid the sick are dragged from their homes, families refuse to touch their own kin, priests stop giving last rites, doctors stop making visits, bodies pile in the streets. You stop counting the dead. There are too many. In desperation, some join the flagellants, roving bands of pilgrims who whip themselves in the streets, begging forgiveness for humanity's sins. You see them pass through town, bleeding and chanting. They say this is the end of days. Others need someone to blame. Rumors spread of poisoned wells, foreigners, Jews, the outsider, the other. Hatred becomes another infection, just as contagious. Pogroms erupt in city after city. Entire communities are burned or driven out. You watch your neighbors cheer as a synagogue is torched. It doesn't save anyone. Historians still debate how many died. A third of Europe? Half? Some regions lost up to 70% of their population. Entire villages vanished from the map. There are fields where no one tends the grain. Towns where no doors creak open. This is not a war. It's not a famine. It's not even a punishment. It's a collapse. The very idea of society, of community, of safety, of order, has broken apart like rotted wood. You survive. You're not sure how. Some days you think it's luck. Others you wonder if you're immune or cursed. You move through a world of ghosts, through alleyways overgrown with weeds, past doorways that will never open again. You eat what you can find. You light candles for people who have no one left to mourn them. You stop talking to the living because they usually don't stay that way for long. And then, one morning, the cart doesn't come. You wait for the bell, but it doesn't ring. You step outside, heart hammering, and find only silence. The plague has passed, not gone entirely, but thinned, moved on. You are still standing. And in that stillness, you finally cry. For your master, for your friends, for the thousands you didn't know but walked beside, for the sound of the cathedral bells, for the bakery that never reopened, for the child's shoe still lying in the gutter. The world is broken, but you are alive, and tomorrow the sun might rise. The world after the plague is quieter than it has any right to be. You wake to stillness, no church bells, no shouting in the streets, no clatter of carts over cobblestones, just the wind sighing through open windows and the occasional cry of a scavenging bird. For a moment, you wonder if the world ended and forgot to take you with it. The smell lingers, though, that mixture of wood smoke, rot, and despair. It clings to the stones, to your clothes, to your skin. Some days you swear it's inside you. You survived the Black Death. That makes you lucky, or cursed, or perhaps just missed. The city is half empty now. You walk through your old neighborhood and count how many homes have gone silent. No light, no sound, just boarded doors or broken shutters. The weeds grow taller than a man in the marketplace. A single cart stands abandoned in the square, still half filled with onions from a sale that never happened. You pass a church with no priest. He died, or ran, or was simply never replaced. You survived, but you are not unchanged. Something in you has twisted, not broken exactly, but bent. You no longer assume people will be there tomorrow. You don't make promises. You don't look far ahead. You no longer believe that the world makes sense. You try to pray, but the words come hollow. God was supposed to protect the faithful, and yet the faithful died by the thousands. The wicked, too. Everyone. So now you sit quietly in the pews, watching the dust dance in the stained glass light, and wonder if your prayers are just your own voice echoing in a cathedral too vast for answers. You're not the only one questioning. Across the countryside, groups of men walk barefoot, stripped to the waist, flagellating themselves in penance. They chant hymns, beat themselves bloody, weep in the streets. The flagellants, they're called. They believe if they suffer enough, perhaps God will forgive the world. Others have less spiritual ideas. You hear whispers, terrible ones, of communities blamed for the plague, entire Jewish villages burned, wells accused of being poisoned, lynch mobs formed not for justice but for vengeance. You pass a building one day, the walls still blackened from the fire. You don't ask what happened. You already know. There are fewer people now, but strangely, the world begins to feel a little looser. You were a peasant, one of many, replaceable, bound to the land, owned more or less. But now, the field still needs harvesting. The Lord still wants bread, and there are only so many hands left to do the work. You find that you can ask for more grain, or shorter days, or even, God's forbid, payment in coin. You're not laughed at, you're negotiating. A shift is happening, slowly, quietly, like a wheel turning on its own for the first time. You hear of entire villages where the peasants have left, walking off the land to find better work elsewhere. Lords try to stop them, to pass laws, to bind them again. But it's hard to chain a man when your knights are dying of the same cough as your serfs. The old feudal bonds are fraying, and something new is rising in the cracks. Markets expand, guilds grow in power. The merchant class, those once scorned middlemen, begin to accumulate wealth. Artisans travel to cities to work in stone and glass and ink. Some even learn to read. Books are still rare, yes, but knowledge is beginning to stretch its limbs. The plague was a scythe, yes, but it cleared the field. And now, in that field, something new is sprouting. You don't realize it, not yet. But in the ashes of the Black Death, the seeds of the Renaissance are stirring. Historians still argue just how much the plague contributed to the coming revolution in thought, science, and art. Some say it merely accelerated changes already underway. Others believe it cracked open the Middle Ages like an egg, letting the light of reason spill through. But from where you stand, in worn shoes, on a half-abandoned street, clutching a stale crust of bread, the future is still a mystery. You don't know about Galileo, or Gutenberg, or Leonardo da Vinci. You don't know that one day a university will rise where your cow pasture once stood, or that a statue will be carved in a city you've never heard of, capturing the perfect form of the human body you've spent your whole life hiding beneath wool and ash. You only know that the worst has passed, and you are still here. You survived when millions didn't. Someone will one day look at your bones and see the pock marks left by the disease. They'll marvel at how you endured, how your body fought a war you didn't understand. They won't see how quiet your nights became, or how often you flinched at the sound of a cough, or how you walked through a city of the dead with nothing but a prayer and a hand over your mouth. But you'll know. You'll carry it forever. And maybe one day when the stars feel a little brighter, you'll even laugh again. You're standing in the heart of a city carved from gold and blood. Towering temples surround you, dazzling in the sunlight. Wide, clean avenues stretch in perfect symmetry. Gardens bloom with flowers so fragrant you wonder if the gods themselves breathe them. Music drifts on the wind, flutes, drums, voices rising in prayer. This is no village, no mud and thatch huddle clinging to survival. This is civilization. You are an Aztec, or perhaps Inca, or one of the Maya. It doesn't matter which. Not really. What matters is that your people have built empires. Complex, elegant, ancient. You have astronomy, calendars, schools, poetry, diplomacy. You chart the stars and plan your crops with mathematics more precise than anything Europe will dream of for another few hundred years. You are not primitive. You are powerful. And then they arrive. From the sea, the ships look like mountains with wings. The men disembarking from them wear metal that glints like knives and clanks like chains. They ride enormous beasts that breathe and snort and have eyes full of thunder. They smell wrong. Their skin is pale and burns in the sun. Their words are gibberish, but their intentions are clear. They bring gifts, beads, mirrors, weapons. Then they bring demands. Then they bring death. At first, it's just a sickness. Someone in the village gets a fever, then a rash, then the boils, then the choking. It spreads fast, faster than anything you've seen before. Within days, entire households lie silent. The priests can't stop it. The gods won't answer. You light incense, burn offering, sacrifice doves, even people, but the disease keeps coming. You have no immunity. None of your people do. This is a virgin soil epidemic. Smallpox doesn't just kill, it erases. It sweeps through your city like fire through dry grass. The elderly, the young, the healthy, the wise. Gone. You've seen death, sacrificed to it, but not like this. Not when the bodies pile so fast you can't bury them. Not when your own family dies while you sit helpless beside them. Not when your priest chokes on his prayers. Historians estimate that up to 90% of the population of the Americas died within a century of contact, most within the first decades. That's not conquest. That's apocalypse. But the death doesn't come alone. It comes with guns and steel and horses and hunger for gold. The Pale Men are not satisfied with trade. They want tribute. Then they want temples. Then they want your city. Then your land. Then you. You try to resist. Your warriors fight bravely. Obsidian blades and cotton armor against iron and gunpowder. You take captives. You lay ambushes. You draw them into the jungle, where their horses stumble and their armor sweats. But you're not just fighting men. You're fighting the flu, and measles, and typhus, and despair. Every day, your army grows smaller. Not from battles, but from sickness. Every new town you try to rally has already buried its leaders. Your messengers arrive too late. Your plans fall apart like rotting cloth. And then, your capital falls. Not because you weren't strong, but because you were never meant to face a storm like this. You watch them desecrate your temples, melt your gods into coins, plant flags in the soil where your ancestors once danced. You see your culture turned into a curiosity, your calendar dismissed as superstition, your medicine mocked, and your language silenced. Your history is not just being rewritten, it's being deleted. The old ways are outlawed, the priests are executed, the surviving children are baptized and renamed. You remember a time, just months ago, when your people stood atop pyramids, shouting poems into the wind, dressed in feathers that shimmered like fire. Now You wear a coarse wool tunic and serve bread to a man who thinks you are barely human. Historians still debate the number. Was it 50 million dead or more? Did the disease arrive before the conquistadors or with them? Did the collapse happen over years or mere months? But none of that matters to you. You lived through it. You are it. You are the last of your family to speak your language. You hum the old songs in secret, your voice low, afraid. You hide the clay statue of the maize goddess under your bed. You dream of feathered serpents and golden cities that crumble into dust as you try to reach them. This was not the beginning of the modern world. It was the ending of countless others. And you? You are a survivor walking across the smoking ruins of a world your children will never believe was real. You are history's footnote, but you remember. And that memory burns brighter than any gold. You are running barefoot through the trees. The moonlight flickers between the branches, silvering the sweat on your skin. Somewhere behind you, a shout. Foreign words barked like thunder, followed by the heavy thud of boots against earth. Your lungs are burning. Your arms ache from the weight of the chains. You haven't eaten in 2 days. But you still run, because if they catch you, they will take you to the coast. And beyond that, the ships. You are not a prisoner. You committed no crime. You are not a soldier captured in battle. You are simply human. And that, now, is a commodity. It is the 18th century, and you have been born into the greatest horror ever devised by human hands. The transatlantic slave trade. The raid came without warning. One moment you were tending to the goats near your village, the next, screaming. Confusion. You saw your brother dragged away, your neighbor struck down, your mother clutching your baby sister before being clubbed to the earth. They tied your wrists, marched you for days. Now your feet are raw, your lips cracked, and the sea stinks like death. The ships loom in the harbor, black silhouettes against the dawn. They call it the door of no return, the stone arch you will pass through before boarding. You understand the name. No one comes back. Ever. Before that, you are herded into the slave fort. The dungeon is dark, wet, and packed tight with bodies. You crouch shoulder to shoulder, barely able to breathe. Some cry. Some whisper prayers. Others rock silently, wide-eyed. The smell is unbearable. Urine, blood. Someone dies beside you during the night. No one moves the body. You are branded. The iron hisses as it touches your skin. You do not scream. You will not give them that. But the worst is still to come. The middle passage. The hold of the ship is a nightmare made real. You are chained wrist to ankle, packed in rows like cargo, with barely enough space to lie on your side. You cannot stand. You cannot stretch. You can barely breathe. The air is thick with sweat and sickness, the groans of the dying, the cries of children, the muffled prayers of people from dozens of nations, dozens of tongues, all reduced to one shared horror. You are fed once a day, mush or hard biscuit, sometimes spoiled. The water is warm and tastes of rust. There is no privacy. You relieve yourself where you lie. The stench is unbearable. You watch as people waste away beside you. Some beg to die. Some try to. The crew lashes them back to life. When disease breaks out, the crew throws the sick overboard. Alive. You see a girl, no older than 13, flailing as she's cast into the sea. Her eyes lock with yours before she vanishes. Some jump willingly. When they think no one is looking, they dive over the edge, shackles and all, into the waiting Atlantic. You imagine their silence in the water below, and sometimes, at night, you envy them. Historians estimate that between 12 and 15 million Africans were taken across the Atlantic during the centuries of the slave trade. At least 2 million died before reaching the Americas, of disease, suicide, starvation, murder. You survive, but your journey has just begun. You arrive in the new world with a name that no one will use. You are washed on shore like driftwood, given a number, stripped, inspected, sold. A man with a feathered hat lifts your lip to examine your teeth like a horse. He taps your knees, feels your muscles. You are purchased. Not employed, not adopted. Purchased. You are property now. The plantation becomes your prison. You rise before dawn, work until your hands bleed. Cane fields, tobacco, cotton. You are whipped if you slow down, whipped if you speak your language, whipped if you so much as look someone in the eye too long. The whip is not just punishment. It is punctuation. It ends sentences. It makes rules. You are not allowed to marry. But sometimes you do anyway, in secret, under the moon, with whispered vows in your mother tongue. Children are born. Sometimes they are sold. You sing while you work, not because you're happy, but because songs carry memory. They are maps, secret messages, tiny acts of rebellion slipped between the rows of sugarcane. Your grandmother's lullaby becomes a code, a rhythm passed from one back to another. You carve out something like life, hidden in plain sight. You do not forget. You remember the village, the river, the goats, the smell of rain on warm earth. You remember your name, even when no one else does. Historians still debate whether slavery or genocide is the greater evil. But this system, is unique in its scale, duration, and intention. 4 centuries. An economy built on bodies. An empire of pain. Every sugar cube, every puff of tobacco, every bolt of cotton soaked in someone's blood. And yet you survive. Not just live. Survive. You find ways to dance, even in chains. You carve drums from barrels. You braid escape routes into your daughter's hair. You tell stories around the fire. You whisper old names. You laugh, somehow. A small laugh, bitter and bright. The kind that says, "You did not break me yet." And somewhere in the distance, generations from now, your great-great-great-grandchild will stand free, reading your story, weeping not from shame, but from pride. Because you did not vanish. They tried, but you remained, and in the face of everything, you stayed human. You are knee-deep in mud that used to be a man. The earth here doesn't feel like soil. It's softer, wetter, greasy with the decay of 1,000 corpses. Boots are swallowed whole. Fingers reach up from the muck, not pleading, just forgotten. This is not metaphor. This is the Western Front. It is 1917, and you are a soldier. Volunteered, conscripted, or perhaps just unlucky. You don't remember why anymore. For country, for glory, for some archduke shot far away in a city you couldn't pronounce. None of that matters now. What matters is that your trench is flooding again. The lice are chewing through your collarbone, and if you lift your head 2 inches above the sandbags, it will likely be removed by a machine gun fire. You haven't seen a tree in weeks. The horizon is a tangle of wire, smoke, and shattered stumps. The sky smells of cordite and mildew. You sleep beside rats the size of cats. Your friend caught one yesterday. The unit cheered like it was a roast pheasant. It wasn't. The days blur together. Shell fire is constant. Artillery barrages that last for hours. Sometimes days. The sound isn't just loud. It becomes a pressure in your chest, a shaking in your teeth. Your ears ring even in silence. Not that silence visits often. You stop flinching after the first week. There's no point. If the shell has your name on it, it finds you. If it doesn't, it finds the boy next to you. You've memorized the shapes of helmets, the splash of mustard gas, the sudden eerie quiet before the whistle blows. You dread the whistle most of all, because when it blows, you go over the top. That means scrambling up the ladder, out of the trench, across no man's land, a few hundred yards of cratered mud and tangled barbed wire, into open fire. You've done it twice. The first time you tripped, landed on something soft. A leg, you think. Maybe just part of one. The second time, you saw your commanding officer's face vanish into red mist. You kept running. Somehow you're still here. Your nerves are not. They've gone missing. You can't sleep. When you do, you dream of wet mouths whispering from the mud, asking for water, for their mothers, for one more cigarette. Your hands shake. Your eyes twitch. Some men start sobbing for no reason, others laugh at nothing. Some go completely still, staring at the wall of the trench as if it might explain why. They call it shell shock. You're told to pull yourself together, but your pieces don't fit anymore. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, when you've adjusted to a life of mud and rats and sudden death, a new enemy arrives. You notice it first on the transport ship. Someone starts coughing, then another. By the time you reach shore, a dozen men are down, burning with fever, vomiting, eyes glassy, blood leaking from the nose. One collapses mid-step, gasping, skin turning blue. He's dead before he hits the deck. This is not your average sickness. It is 1918, and the Spanish flu has begun. It spreads faster than anything you've seen. One man sneezes, and 10 fall sick by nightfall. The hospitals fill, then the train stations, then the churches, then the morgues. Bodies stack in the streets. Funeral carts run out of horses. You return home on leave and find the town shuttered. The windows are marked with chalk. Black for dead, white for the dying. Doctors wear gauze masks soaked in whiskey. Some wear nothing at all. They don't know what they're dealing with. Because this flu is strange. It doesn't just kill the old or the weak. It kills the young, the strong, the healthy. People like you. Soldiers, mothers, teachers, priests, children. The immune system overreacts. That's the theory. It floods the lungs. You drown from the inside. One day, your neighbor's wife coughs at breakfast and is dead by lunch. The next day, 3 more follow her. Soon your house becomes a hospital. Then a tomb. Historians estimate the Spanish flu killed at least 50 million people. Some argue it was closer to 100 million. That's more than the entire death toll of the First World War, and it did it in less than 2 years. You think of all those men who survived the trenches, who dodged bullets, shells, gas, bayonets, only to die from a cough. You survived the war, but you are not triumphant. You are hollow. You return to your village, a quiet that feels wrong in your bones. There are faces missing, shops closed, schoolyards silent. The church bell hasn't rung in weeks. The vicar died coughing into his robes. You don't talk about the war, or the flu. No one does. You just nod, pass the bread, keep your eyes on your boots. But at night, you remember. You remember the whistle, the mud, the blue lips, the silence. And you wonder if it's over, or if the world has simply caught its breath, waiting for the next round. Because deep down, you know, the worst times don't end. They just pause. You smell smoke before you see the train. It snakes toward the station, huffing clouds into the cold morning air, the windows darkened. You've been told you're going somewhere to work, to be resettled, that it's all temporary, that your papers are being processed. But your papers are gone, and the man with the clipboard doesn't know your name. You are Jewish in Europe, and it is the early 1940s. You've already lost your home, your job, your school, your neighbors. You watched your parents sign over property to men with armbands. You watched friends disappear in the night. You've been wearing the yellow star for months now, stitched not just to your coat but into your skin. Now you are waiting for a train. You climb into the boxcar with dozens of others. It's hot, then freezing. There's no food, no water. One bucket for waste. The journey lasts days. Someone dies along the way. You don't know their name. You don't even have the space to move your arms. When the doors slide open, a new world stares back. Barbed wire, dogs, guards in grey. A watchtower with a machine gun and a silent man staring down. Auschwitz. You are marched out into the blinding light, separated by gender, by age, by usefulness. The old are shuffled one way, mothers with children another, the young and strong, your line. Someone whispers, if they point left, you live. You are pointed right. And so your life continues, barely. You are given a number. It is tattooed on your forearm. That number becomes your name. It is what they call you. It is what they record. You are no longer a person, only an entry in a ledger. Your head is shaved, your clothes taken. You are given wooden shoes and a uniform that smells like mildew and death. You sleep in bunks 3 bodies high. The cold is endless. You are fed a crust of bread and watery soup that tastes like rust. You wake before dawn to roll call. Every day, standing outside for hours in the snow. You don't speak, you don't move. If you fall, you are beaten. If you stand too slowly, you are beaten. If someone else escapes, 10 of you will be chosen to die in their place. You dig ditches. You move rocks. You carry bricks back and forth. Bricks that serve no purpose except to drain your body of will. You see the chimneys. You know what they are. Some nights, you catch the scent in the wind. It is ash. You learn to stop asking questions. You learn to stop making friends, because the ones you make are taken away too quickly. You learn to breathe shallowly, to move quickly, to never meet a guard's eye. You become good at vanishing. Historians still argue how many died. 6 million Jews, yes, but also millions of others. Roma, the disabled, political prisoners, gay men, Slavs. The machinery of the Holocaust was not improvised. It was systematic, calculated, engineered. You live within that machine, and yet somehow you remain human. You whisper songs at night, just fragments. You scratch your sister's name into a corner of your bunk. You pass a crust of bread to the boy beside you, even though your ribs are poking through your skin. You survive. Until one day the guards are gone. The gates are open. A soldier in a green uniform stares at you like he's seeing a ghost. He is. The camp is liberated. You step outside the barbed wire not with joy, but with confusion. The world is no longer a camp, but you are still wearing the uniform. You are still carrying the number. The world moves on, but the number doesn't. And just when you think the human race has found its lowest point, it shows you it can dig deeper. Because while the death camps are being uncovered, scientists in secret bunkers are finishing another project. A different kind of apocalypse. You are now someone else. A child in Hiroshima. It is summer. August 6th, 1945. You are helping your grandmother sweep the porch. The cicadas hum in the trees. Children laugh nearby. The war has dragged on for years, but you are alive. Hungry, but alive. Then comes the light. So bright it has no color. So sudden it erases the sky. Then the heat. A wall of fire that melts roof tiles, vaporizes skin, and peels shadows into the pavement. You don't hear the blast. You become the blast. The atomic bomb has arrived, the first of its kind, and in a fraction of a second, 80,000 lives disappear. You crawl from the rubble, skin burned, air thick with dust and silence. People stagger by, clothes burned off, skin hanging in sheets. A man holds his own eyeballs in his palms. A mother screams for a child already ash. The sky turns black. Then it rains. Black rain. Radiation falls from the clouds. Invisible. Undeniable. And somewhere far away, someone in a suit watches a mushroom cloud blossom and says, "It worked." Historians will later argue that the bomb ended the war, that it saved lives, that it was necessary. But you are not a theory. You are ash and breath and grief. And worse still, the bomb is just the beginning. Because now, humanity knows what it can do. We have the power to end ourselves. Not slowly, not through war or disease, but instantly, completely, with a button. We are no longer merely survivors. We are a species that can choose extinction. The worst time to be born? It might not be behind us. It might still be waiting. Let's step back for a moment. You've just walked through volcanic winters, ice age famines, war, plague, genocide, fire, and chains. You've lived and died a dozen times, each as someone born into a different slice of human catastrophe. And now the question floats quietly above it all. What was the worst time in history to be born? It's tempting to name one. Was it during the Toba supereruption, when ash choked the sun and humanity nearly blinked out? Or perhaps the year 536, when even the sky refused to shine and famine swept continents? Was it the Black Death, fast, pitiless, and unimaginably vast? Or was it when you were crammed into a slave ship, or dragged behind barbed wire to a death camp? Maybe it's now, or next. But choosing just one feels wrong, because the pain was never evenly distributed. It came in waves, geographical, political, geological. Some generations endured all of it. Others were spared. Suffering has always had a postcode. It's not just about death. If it were, the numbers alone would answer the question. But there's more than one kind of horror. You could die fast, crushed under a mammoth or dissolved by acid rain in a post-volcanic swamp. Or you could die slow, by starvation, or slavery, or grief so heavy it collapsed your chest like armor. You could be forgotten by the world, or remembered only as a number. So maybe it's not about how you died. Maybe it's about what was stolen from you. Was it freedom? Was it meaning? Was it the chance to decide who you were? You can categorize the suffering if you like. It might help you sleep. There were the natural disasters, impartial, senseless, cruelly democratic in their randomness. Toba, the little ice age, the year without a summer. There were the man-made disasters, rationalized and planned with ink and policy. The slave trade, the Holocaust, the endless wars over borders no one remembers how to draw. Then there are the systemic disasters, the ones that didn't feel like disasters at all. Agriculture, industry, civilization itself. You were born into them thinking it was progress, only to find the trap too late. Historians still argue over whether farming was a mistake, whether cities doomed us, whether the invention of the state was a slow-motion apocalypse dressed up in walls and taxes. And then there's the uniquely modern horror. The knowledge that it could happen again, that it's not behind us, that we have the tools now to end everything, not through fire or flood, but through choice. We've built the means. We've done the testing. Climate collapse, AI run amok, pandemics grown in petri dishes, nuclear winter, mass extinction. You could be born today and still live through something worse than Toba, worse than 536, worse than Auschwitz. The possibility is no longer unthinkable. It's scheduled. So maybe the real answer isn't, what was the worst time to be born? Maybe it's, what kind of suffering are we willing to forget? Was it the kind that left bodies in the streets and names in the margins? Or the kind that turned people into numbers? Or the kind that whispered softly, day after day, that this is just the way things are? Maybe the worst time wasn't when people died in droves, but when they stopped noticing, when suffering became normalized, when children disappeared from ledgers and no one asked why, when a man was whipped in a field and no one turned their head, when the sky darkened for 2 years and people still trudged into fields because they had no other choice. So you weigh them. Death by starvation, death by disease, death by despair, death by ideology, death by accident, death by design. And then you realize none of it adds up. Because suffering is not mathematical. It isn't cumulative or comparative. It is personal. If it happened to you, it was the worst. If it happened to your child, it was the worst. If it ended your world, even just yours, it was the worst. So maybe the question itself is a trap. Maybe the point of walking through these histories isn't to rank them. Maybe it's to remember them, to honor the ones who endured, not because they chose to, but because they had no choice. To recognize the different shapes that horror takes, and how often it wears the mask of normalcy. The worst time to be born? Any moment where hope was gone. And yet somehow, people still clung to life, still lit fires, still whispered songs to the stars, still had children. Not because the world deserved it, but because the world needed it. And that might be the only reason we're still here. You're lying in bed. Not on straw, not on the ground, not in a trench or under a collapsed roof or on the splintered deck of a ship full of chains. A real bed. Soft. Still. Yours. You are warm. The lights hum quietly behind the walls. The air smells faintly of detergent, and maybe the coffee you forgot to finish this morning. Somewhere outside, A car rolls by. A dog barks, nothing dramatic. And you're here. Alive. Safe. Born into the long, unbroken chain of survival that stretches through the darkest corners of human history, all the way to this room, this mattress, this moment. Do you know how impossible that is? Do you realize how many times your story almost didn't happen? Someone in your lineage, thousands of years ago, survived the Toba eruption and the volcanic winter that followed. They inhaled the ash, choked on the dust, saw the stars vanish, and they kept moving. They buried their dead with frozen fingers and passed on a name anyway. Another ancestor ran through a field of ice with mammoth blood on their hands, or maybe with nothing at all, just hunger in their belly and a fire-warmed hide wrapped around their shoulders. They endured when the wind felt like a knife and the food was too scarce to count. One lived through famine, another outlived plague. Another made it across the ocean in the dark belly of a ship and still found a reason to sing. One stood in a factory while the bombs fell. One hid in a cellar with her sister, reading by candlelight. One stepped into a trench with no illusions and walked out again, heart racing, mud caked in their mouth, somehow still human. Your bloodline threaded its way through collapse after collapse, through empire and ruin and reinvention, not just surviving, but insisting. On breath, on love, on trying again. Historians estimate there have been over 100 billion human beings in our species' history, but only one in each generation had to survive for you to exist. Just one, and every single one of them did. They suffered so that you could sleep with a fan on, so that you could have nightmares from YouTube history videos rather than from reality, so that your idea of a bad day might involve traffic and an overcooked dinner, not fire and famine and being forgotten by the world. And here's the paradox you've inherited. You live in the safest, most prosperous era in all of human history. You are less likely to die of disease, war, starvation, or childbirth than at any other time. You are more connected, better fed, longer lived, and more literate than any peasant, nomad, or scribe could have imagined. And yet, you carry the same bones, the same nervous system, the same fight-or-flight reflex that once kept you from being eaten by lions now kicks in when someone leaves you on red. You worry, you ache, you wonder if you're enough. And sometimes in the middle of the night, you lie awake and ask yourself why you feel so tired, as if you're carrying a weight you can't name. But maybe that's not your weakness. Maybe it's your inheritance, a memory echoing through time, of hunger, of grief, of survival. Maybe the reason you're tired is because somewhere deep in your blood, your ancestors are still whispering, "We made it. Now it's your turn." And so, you continue. You rest when you can. You light a candle. You hold someone's hand. You hum a lullaby you don't remember learning. You watch the stars and think, they're still there. You live, you love, and in doing so, you honor them. All of them. Because the worst time in history to be born, it wasn't yours. And maybe that's the greatest miracle of all. So now, just lie back. Let it settle in. You've traveled through volcanic winters, through cities gripped by plague and whispers of ash. You've been born into chains and carved your way out. You've stood beneath a sky gone dark, or heard the whistle blow on a battlefield, or watched a stranger's hand reach for you in fear. And yet, here you are. You are the end point of an impossible story. A story that should have ended a dozen times. A thread that frayed and frayed but never broke. You are a quiet, living miracle. Breathe in. There's no smoke in the air, no ash on the ground, no torchlight flickering outside your home. Just your breath, soft and steady. Just the hum of life continuing. Breathe out. There's nothing chasing you. No soldier outside the door. No winter clawing at your ribs. No famine hiding in the soil. Just this room. This moment. This quiet. Breathe in. You don't have to outrun mammoths, or wars, or fire. Breathe out. You've already outrun time. Let your eyes drift closed. Let your hands go still. Let your body understand what your ancestors never could. Safety. You're here. You made it. Sleep well.